Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. You get it.
Hello and welcome to the first entry of my film journal where I watch your favorite movie. I'm Frankie, and today I'll be going off the beaten track with Shrek. Recently I sat down to read The Dispossessed, which is a 1974 anarchist utopian science fiction novel by renowned American author Ursula K. Guin. And honestly, for the life of me, I could not get my brain to not read Shrek, which is the name of the main character in the book, as Shrek. So for the whole 300 and so pages, I keep imagining Shrek as a physicist who has to leave his home as his theories go against the society's leading political philosophy, and he is unable to continue his work, so he heads to another planet that operates under hierarchical capitalism, and he eventually realizes that his work will be used not to improve society but for potential warfare, and he gets attacked by an angry mob and stuff. A lot happens, and honestly, the more I thought about it, I felt that Shrek kind of fit well into the story. I hadn't really seen Shrek in probably 15 years. So after I finished reading The Dispossessed, it felt just right to celebrate by revisiting this classic. This 2001 fantasy comedy film starts with a retelling of what is essentially Sleeping Beauty, let's be real. They don't say it, but basically a princess is put under a spell and stuck in a castle that is guarded by a dragon, and eventually she's rescued by a prince who kisses her when she's asleep.
Right to jail, right away.
But I'm not really sure if any of this will be relevant to the movie at all, because it turns out that Shrek's just reading this book while he's in the loo. So let's just, forget about it. It's probably not important at all. Shrek's an ogre who's living his best life in his off-the-grid tiny house way before it was trendy and all of you wanted to do it. He likes cooking and being creative, and just generally he's a self-care king. Slay. The local townspeople, though, they do not like him because he's him. How dare this guy exist in his house while ugly? They take their pitchforks and they sneak up on Shrek, but he scares them off. And while they're running away, they drop a leaflet that tells us that there is a reward for fairy tale creatures. So that's actually why they were there. They were just like, hey, let's gay. Hey, let's gay. Let's gay, guys. I'm a believer. Let's gay. These guys just woke up and they were like, hey, let's go sell that guy who's different for money. Normal human stuff. Right. Isn't that so? Turns out that loads of humans are turning in fairy tale characters, and among them is also Donkey, who is a talking donkey. Is this about concentration camps? Luckily, he manages to make a run for it, and while being chased by some soldiers, he bumps into Shrek in the woods, who, again, does what he's good at and scares the soldiers away. And Donkey's like, this guy is my ride or die. We're the dynamic duo. I'm never leaving his side. Shrek is not so enthused about this idea and tries to scare Donkey away too. But he has met his match, and Donkey uses his powerful yapping skills to convince Shrek to let him stay for the night. The power of yap compels you. I just won't shut up about how you're my friend, and we shall be friends. That's how Donkey does it. Turns out, Donkey isn't the first or last visitor Shrek will have that night. The whole library of fairy tale characters show up, because get this, they have been forcibly displaced by this guy named Lord Farquaad. So Shrek's like, I'm gonna go talk to this guy so y'all can get off my lawn. I don't like that you're in my swamp. and he heads to find Farquaad alongside Donkey. So I bet you're thinking, because for sure this is the first time you're hearing about this movie, who's this Lord Farquaad guy? Well, turns out he's this short royal guy with a bad attitude. He sucks, and the first time we see him, he is torturing gingerbread man. Awful guy.
The muffin man? The muffin man!
Lord Farquaad locates the magic mirror from Snow White's fairy tale, and the mirror tells him that technically he's not king, even though he has power, but you know, he can fix that problem by involving an unsuspecting woman. I actually really loved this part as a child. The magic mirror goes into this like 70s dating style show, where Farquaad chooses between 3 bachelorettes to marry so that he can be king. Our first bachelorette is Cinderella, who is a quote-unquote mentally abused shut-in. We're not going to say anything about that. The second is Snow White, whom Farquaad just evicted, by the way. Let's remember, while she's in a coma. And the third is Fiona, who is stuck in a dragon-guarded castle. Farquaad latches onto the idea of Fiona, and instead of going to save her himself, he decides to host a tournament and honor the winner with the task. Meanwhile, Shrek and Donkey have made it to Farquaad's castle, which is set up like an amusement park. This place is so homogenous. It is so commercial. You just can't help but want to spend your hard-earned gold here. Shrek and Donkey find this automated information booth that has little puppets in it that explains how to behave in Duloc. For anyone who's attended a corporation introduction training, this might give you some flashbacks, so trigger warning.
Can we have some rules? Let us lay them down. Don't make waves, stay in line, and we'll get along fine. Duloc is the perfect place.
As luck would have it, Shrek and Donkey arrive just in time to hear Farquaad's commencement speech at his tournament.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
It's giving tech CEO who read one productivity self-help book and decided to restructure the whole company. It's giving oil companies making record profits by destroying the planet. It's giving any decision made by any president of the United States of America. When Farquaad notices Shrek, he's just like, oh, I have a great idea. Instead of, I don't know, you guys like fighting one another, just unalive this guy. Because he's here and he's ugly. So just do that and then you can go get my wife. Great deal. The contestants attack Shrek and Donkey, but they shred and they beat all of them up. Farquaad, like the resourceful, business-minded asshat that he is, tells Shrek that he will get his swamp back if he goes and gets Fiona. This is why you shouldn't do too well when you're employed somewhere, because you'll just get more work, you know? He's basically like, yeah, I'll displace those people again if you do my bidding. Donkey gets it.
Okay, let me get this straight. You're gonna go fight a dragon and rescue a princess just so Farquaad to give you back a swamp, which you only don't have because you filled it full of freaks in the first place. Is that about right?
Honestly, when you find yourself in times of trouble, think, what would Donkey do? What would Donkey say? What would Donkey think? Shrek goes on this whole spiel about how ogres are like onions because onions have layers and ogres have layers. And what he meant by this was that there's more to an ogre than just the stories of how ogres are and how they should be perceived. But honestly, when I was little, I could not help but think of like layers of ogre bodysuits made of ogre skin stacked onto one another like one of those matryoshka dolls. Do you guys know those ones? No need to psychoanalyze me. Let's just move on. And I'm sure this onion thing is barely relevant to the plot at all. We never need to discuss this ever again. And so they continue their journey to Fiona. One might even say they're on their way from misery to happiness today. Aha, 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 aha. I felt bad even reading it, so I'm not gonna do it again. Anyways, they reach Fiona's castle, which I think about maybe too much. I wonder how the heating bills are for this house. This castle is huge and made of stone, so the heating bill should be abysmal, but then there's a lake of lava surrounding it. Can someone explain the science to me? Are we hot? Are we cold? What's going on? Donkey and Shrek split up to find Fiona, but instead of doing that, the dragon finds Donkey. They very narrowly escape, but they do thanks to the power of Yap. Yet again. That's right. Donkey just yaps and sweet talks the dragon, which gives a chance for Shrek to find Fiona and save them both. Here's the thing. Fiona has been stuck in this castle for a long time and has had a long time to imagine what this rescue would be like. Hashtag Limerence Queen. Reality is a little different than what she expected, because instead of a handsome prince, Fiona was rescued by a freelance ogre.
This is all wrong. You're not supposed to be an ogre.
Shrek explains to Fiona that he was actually sent by Lord Farquaad, who wants to marry her, and Fiona is understandably upset by this. They start heading back to Duloc, and Fiona asks Shrek and Donkey about what Farquaad is like, and the guys are like, he is short. He's short, so short. He is short. Soon Fiona realizes that the sun is about to go down, and she is totally normal about this fact.
I need to find somewhere to camp now!
Okay, girl. I'm sure there's nothing more to this reaction. Let's just camp. They find a small cave for Fiona to sleep in while Shrek and Donkey sleep outside under the stars. Donkey asks Shrek about what they're gonna do with the swamp once they hand Fiona over to Farquaad, and Shrek gets really defensive about the whole thing because it is his swamp, only his. No one else should be there because he's an ogre and everyone should stay away. Donkey calls out Shrek for being too strict with his boundaries and isolating himself, and guess what? It turns out Shrek has trauma from being ostracized his whole life, but Donkey is a good friend about it.
When we met, I didn't think you was just a big, stupid, ugly ogre.
Fiona, who overheard their conversation last night, starts off the day in a cheerier mood. This was savage when I watched this as a child. Everyone starts bonding on their way back to Duloc, but that's when Robin Hood shows up with his merry men, and they try to rescue Fiona by performing a musical number.
Man, that was annoying.
Before we address this whole martial arts thing, can anyone tell me why Robin Hood is French in this movie? I've always had the impression that Robin Hood was an English story, but I guess, yeah, more importantly, Fiona can kick ass. And let me ask you, if you can fight like that, then why would you spend ages stuck in a castle waiting for a man to save you?
Let's go, girls.
Anyhow, turns out in all the commotion, Shrek got struck with an arrow in his butt cheek. Donkey starts freaking out, so Fiona sends him off to find a blue flower with red thorns, and this leads us to my absolute favorite joke from this movie when I was a kid.
Blue flower, red thorns, blue flower, red thorns, blue flower, red thorns. This would be so much easier if I wasn't colorblind.
It's just so funny to me. This is what good comedy writing is about. Donkey finds the flower and runs back, only to find Shrek and Fiona in a compromising position. And he's like, I'm sensing a vibe, guys. You can't hide it from me. They continue their journey, and just as they're about to reach Duloc, they decide to camp out for the night because they actually really like each other, but no one wants to admit anything. Shrek makes them dinner. That looks amazing. But soon the sun starts to set once more, and Fiona retreats to the windmill they're camping next to. Donkey, who is really the goat in this movie, let's be honest, calls out Shrek yet again because he's like, you like Fiona and you're not saying anything. And Shrek's like, no princess will like ogre like me. But Donkey can't really leave it be, so he goes to speak to Fiona. And surprise! This princess has been hiding something this entire time. Who would have thought? Not me. Did you think she was hiding something? I didn't even notice.
Now!
So remember the story from the very beginning of the movie? Yeah, it turns out that it was relevant after all, and Fiona has a spell put on her where she turns into an ogre at night. So Fiona's like, I gotta marry Farquaad before sunset tomorrow so no one finds out that I am part-time ugly. But Donkey really urges Fiona to tell Shrek the truth because it feels like maybe they would have a little bit more in common than they're saying they would have in common. I don't know. This is when Shrek overhears their conversation and he thinks that they're talking about how ugly he is, and he disappears into the night. In the morning, Fiona takes up the courage to tell Shrek about her spell, but alas, it is too late. She turns back into human form before Shrek shows up in the morning while being extra salty, and he brings Farquaad and his medieval minion gang over to meet Fiona.
You don't have to waste good manners on the ogre.
You don't have to waste good manners. That's a very healthy way to live. And so Shrek gets his swamp deed and Fiona heads off with Farquaad to get married that same day. Donkey tries to talk sense into Shrek, but he lashes out his hurt feelings on Donkey and he's like, I'm gonna get back to my swamp. Shrek has just been hurt so much that he just expects everyone to hurt him. That's tough. Everyone is alone. Everyone is sad. Except Farquaad, because he's gonna be king. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Then, taking things into his own hoofs, Donkey shows up to take his half of the swamp. He and Shrek have an argument, and Donkey's like, you always just talk about yourself, but now I'm talking, and you're gonna listen. And he calls out Shrek for how he treats him and others.
You're so wrapped up in layers, onion boy, you're afraid of your own feelings.
You tell him, Donkey. You tell him. He tells Shrek that, maybe possibly, allegedly, Fiona has feelings for him, and they hitch a ride on Dragon, whom Donkey met up with a little bit earlier, in order to stop Fiona's wedding to Farquaad. Shrek arrives just in time and interrupts the ceremony. Farquaad's reaction is totally normal.
It's rude enough being alive when no one wants you.
So normal. Shrek tells Fiona that Farquaad's marrying her only to be king, and she reveals her ogre form as the sun sets. Farquaad is obviously upset by this, and he gets his minions to attack them. What a slimy little man. But don't worry, he gets what's coming for him, and Dragon just gobbles him up. It just goes to show that your power doesn't really mean anything if someone else has a dragon. Shrek tells Fiona he loves her, and Fiona tells Shrek that she loves him, and they kiss. It's all very romantic, and Fiona's spell is broken, and she takes on her true form as an ogre. They get married and ride off into the sunset in a giant onion, just like in a storybook. So obviously Shrek is an absolute banger of a classic when it comes to cinema. I remember even as a child I could see how special the movie was, not just from the 3D animation, because that was a really novel technology at the time, but also from the storytelling. I don't think I ever saw this movie in cinemas, at least I don't really remember seeing it in the cinema, but my parents did get me a VHS tape, and I remember that I would just spend hours with my nose just glued up to our old color analog television until I had the whole script memorized, and I would just mouth it along as the movie played. Shrek is a really good example of how to take stories and tropes that are widely known in society and use them to find some freedom from the rigidity of those stories. I'm seeing that Shrek is a really good example of how we try to fill these specific roles in our society and in our own lives. But sometimes it's more important just to, consider how you can show up as yourself, actually. Da da da, da da da. Shrek asks us, what are the rigid stories we can recognize in our own lives that keep us stuck? And how can we step out of our cozy, secluded swamps and dragon-guarded, volcano-heated castles? And I think that's one of the reasons why I was so reminded of Shrek when reading The Dispossessed. I'm of course paraphrasing this, and if you want to read the real thing, then I'm adding a link to this description, but Ursula once wrote about the journey she had to go through from recognizing her passionate opposition to and protesting the Vietnam War to learning more about pacifism and nonviolent resistance in order to have the story of this anarchist utopia take shape. She hadn't read any book before that gave her the right framework to even know how to approach writing this book, so she had to explore outside of what she knew and was taught in order to do so.
Cool.
Unfortunately, mass displacement is not only a fictional issue, but is also happening now as you watch this video. If you are able, I've added some links in the description on how you can help Sudanese and Palestinian people who are in dire need of nourishment and safety after having to leave their homes. Hey you! Thanks for watching this whole video. If you like what I do, why not hit the subscribe button over here and let me know in the comments what movie I should watch next. YouTube thinks you might like this video next, but I also worked on this one, so you can click either one or not click anything. It's up to you. I hope you have fun watching your next movie. Bye. Let's go. I'm gonna be thinking about that for a little while.